And we are live one more time this week. I have my mushroom coffee, I have my yerba mate here, and I have my good friend Nathan. Nathan, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, Matt, I mean, first appreciate being able to have a fun, sort of live conversation, and excited to talk about LTV and customer loyalty and retention. I think it's a topic that at least the more brands that we talk to and things like that feel like the more of this, at least in this sort of cycle of stuff with growing brands, it seems like it's becoming more and more of a hot topic. So excited to chat through it.
100%. Thanks so much for taking your time and hopping on a live stream here. I think it's a great topic to talk. Retention is very, very important, as we all know, into e-com and any other business out there. Communication with your customers is so important. And today we're going to talk about loyalty and how to leverage newest tech to make it even more personalized. I'm very excited to hear about your solutions. So if you want, why don't you introduce your company and the short story behind it, like why loyalty, why more personalized loyalty, and take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, so Rayleon is is my company. So I'm co-founder and CEO. I do have a technical founder as well, Adam, and he and I have been working together for a long time. And really, what we focus on personalized loyalty for brands, and we leverage quite a lot of AI to make it happen. And really, like the precipice of sort of how this came to be was a couple things. So my background is more in sort of martech and fintech and things like that. When I first got out of college, I actually started off in e-commerce. So not to like date myself entirely, but this was like Magento was just becoming a thing. So we actually rolled our own e-commerce store, and all that, because Magento was like not really that that polished yet. And it's even at that point in time, I would not recommend building your e-commerce store. If your own platform from the ground up, I would still not recommend it today. So that hasn't changed. But
you almost, sorry for interrupting, you almost built
yeah.
another Shopify, but you decided to do something else. Take it from there.
Yeah, well, it's fine. So at the time it was for a brand. So like I went and I worked for a brand. I built out a whole product team for them, and we built an e-commerce solution specifically around around performance parts and things like that for for cars. But yes, you're right. So we could have competed with Magento presumably, because it did work. We had a lot of order volume going through it. But
didn't Shopify start the same way? Like they were selling snowboards or something, and then turn it to Shopify that we know now. So imagine you'd be a direct competitor to Magento and Shopify and all these.
That's true. It's funny. Like ironically, like although building on Shopify is a huge integration for ours. We build, I'd say, largely on top of that today. And for some reason, like I actually never made that connection of like, oh, that's funny. How to fast forward, 15, 18 years, whatever the time frame is, and we could have been Shopify, but no. It's instead I started a fintech company that did quite well in and of its own. So I'm okay with that.
Yes, happy to hear that. And you have a obviously very, very interesting background. But before we digress, let's talk about Rayleon. So if you can introduce us into the personalization part of it, and why loyalty? Because you said you had a background in e-commerce. Obviously, you wanted to build a better platforms and leverage newest technology, which is artificial intelligence. So why loyalty?
Yeah, I mean, so what we found on the loyalty side is a few things. I mean, one, like the idea of like just treating customers well has frankly always been like kind of near and dear to my heart. So like I've had great mentors, and one of my favorite lines from one of them is like, you always want to treat every customer like they're your only customer. And if you think about that in concept, the way that you do that is like it has to be very, very personal. And historically, it's been really difficult and expensive to do anything that's really kind of personalized, unless you're leveraging AI and everything else. So some of those breakthroughs make it a lot more reasonable. But also part of why loyalty is, if you sort of look at the majority of the loyalty experiences, I always liken it to like it's sort of like where email was, call it 10 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, right? Where it's like if you at the time when say like Marketo and Pardo and sort of those broader marketing email marketing automation solutions were around. They didn't really personalize much. It was a lot more of like, oh, we've just automated sending out these big blasts of things, And then you have Klaviyo that really, built a CDP into it. They made personalization much easier, much more capable, and I'd say much more cost effective as a result. And obviously Klaviyo is, used by, hundreds of thousands of, of customers today. And when we looked at loyalty, it was a very, I'd say similar, it's in a similar place today, frankly, where like, if you look at, the vast majority of providers out there, unless you're say the billion-dollar brands that are paying for super expensive enterprise grade software that's kind of custom to them, it ends up being the same thing where it's just this very generic experience. Frankly, in an age when, like, if you want to drive, better retention and everything else, like making it personalized and tailored is how it's going to be, right? Like everybody runs on an algorithm these days. So like every brand should have their own, and it should be able to be something that kind of leverages itself into retention and loyalty and so on. So that's sort of, where, there was the idea behind it, is being able to really take this kind of enterprise grade AI oriented tech and actually bring it down to the brands that are doing, say, $1 million to $100 million a year in revenue, that want that same capability. And even I'd say some unique things that we do on top of that you don't see today, but it's something that's actually affordable and scalable for them.
Makes sense. And to your point, by the way, I love this quote: "Treat your customer as this is the only customer." I actually haven't heard about it. I heard about the Amazon approach or Jeff Bezos approach. Customers always a priority, and we always have to take care of the customer, provide them with the best pricing, best experience. So I always keep that in the back of my mind. However, I feel like with loyalty programs, a lot of brands almost like treat it as this plug and play, one time setup and forget it type of thing, where, we have some sort of loyalty programs, it's running in the background, but, we don't pay attention too much. We didn't really look into that. Or the most popular quote, like, yes, we have to look into that, but we haven't the time to do it just yet. So, I mean, we're going to talk about how to speed up that process so you can actually look into that much faster, or brands can do. But I like always to, when I explain something in like for e-commerce, I like to, or whenever I talk to someone about like emails, automated sequences, or when we brainstorm about creative ideas to implement this or build it for a brand, I like to compare it to a physical or local store, small business owner, where you have usually, especially in the beginning, like their founders or the owners are in the store and they want to treat their customer with special care. And you have always that one coffee place that you always visit, right? So the lowest hanging fruit for loyalty for these businesses is just collecting information so they can talk to me when I'm not in the store, which is, email or SMS. Obviously, it's a local store. And just reminding me that, hey, you haven't stopped by for, 2 weeks. Come back. We have something special for you. You have some points that you've collected over time. You can exchange them for, free coffee or free snack, free, pastry or whatever snack. Yeah. It's a store for our dog, right? So these are always making me think, keep it in the back of my head. Always usually like within the next 24 hours, I'm talking to Claudia, like, what? I think we should stop by and get, go visit this juice bar, or we have to go and grab coffee there. So you always keep it in mind, right? Same as for e-commerce. Like,
yep, absolutely.
Look into that, find out what is already working. What are your customers telling about the loyalty programs? What are they using? How are they benefiting from it? And find these low hanging fruits. So
absolutely. And it's funny. I often use sort of the local, like the local example too. And actually that's part of what even triggered this was, so in addition to like the idea of, look, you should treat every customer like they're your only customer, seeing kind of the opportunity in the space, and the Shopify ecosystem is amazing. So like I've been a long customer of Panera, and it's like I spoke at Shop Talk and I gave this same example. And like Panera's actually improved their system today. So I'm not trying to like hate on Panera. So like I don't drink coffee. Like I've never it's been a long time, I should say, since I had coffee.
Wow.
But probably like going on 10 years. But so yeah, I cut out caffeine entirely. That's a whole separate thing. But so like I've never had coffee at Panera. Like I never bought it once. Like I don't drink coffee. And for the longest time, like, they try to do like the engagement, right? Where it's like, oh, well, like, you've got these things, or you came here N number of, like, for theirs is less points. And it's like, oh, you've eaten here like 3 times for this month or whatever, right? Here's your free coffee. And I'm like, guys, like this means nothing to me. Like, and honestly, and like the funny thing, right, is that's the majority of the loyalty programs out there, especially in the e-commerce space, which is why we started there, are that way, right? Where like people seem to think like, oh, well, it's going to be this magical thing, right? So it's sort of how it gets set up, where it's like, well, like, yeah, all you have to do is you put this points program, and like people love points, and like, look, there's behavioral science around that, which is true, but it could be so much more effective. It's the same way of like, yeah, you could send an email and like somebody might open it and they might do something, or you could actually personalize it and make it tailored and like and really applicable with a strong CTA, and like that's just going to convert better. But anyway, it's that same idea of like most of the programs that exist today in the e-commerce realm are that Panera example, where it's like, well, here, would you like some coffee? And you're like, no, I wouldn't. I don't have coffee. I've never bought coffee from you. Versus like, hey, here's this reward that really applies to you and makes you care, and it actually makes it lets you come back to the store, come back to the brand, and do and actually do things and have a great experience. So that's a lot of what we're focused on using data too.
Because it's relevant, right? And but the text about or emails about coffees are not relevant to use at all, right? The same. I actually have to call them now that you say it. My old dermatologist just keep texting me every 3 weeks with the same text. It says, "Our records show." I learned it by heart by now because I get it. And I never subscribe or not. I don't know how legally they do it, but they keep texting me like, "Our records show that it's time for the next visit." And my last visit was like 2022.
Right. You're like, you don't say.
What do I need to like do over there? I don't have any problems. Relevancy is so important. You got to make it relevant. So one size fit all is old school.
Yep.
New school is to make it more personalized.
That's it.
Segue it into your solution, and I'm excited to share it with the audience and learn more about it myself as well.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And you're exactly right. And I think maybe I'll pull this up because I think as we're sort of talking about, how do you, where do you even start with this? Because it's funny, I'd say, so let me, I'm multitasking poorly. Let me select this thing here. So like one of the really common things that we hear in talking with brands is, and you kind of alluded to this at the beginning. It's like, there's like, I feel like everybody knows like, well, loyalty is an option. And they're like, well, like, and depending on what your experience has been, most people either tend to be like, yeah, like I know I should probably do it, but like it just like, but they think about like grocery store points, not to knock grocery stores, but it's like some people have this very like tangible sort of aversion, to loyalty through a bad experience, usually because, to your point, Matt, it's one size fits all. Whereas others, if they've had a really good experience through something like Mecca or Sephora or brands like that, then they tend to like be like, ooh, we really want to do this. We've sort of seen how effective it is. But in either case, one of the things that's been pretty unique for us is because we use AI, we start from the foundation of like, what's the actual loyal customer journey look like today? So, as opposed to saying, oh, we'll just go and roll out points and so on and so forth, we like to be really specific and going and saying, well, let's just start with like understanding where you're at today. Because part of our philosophy, and we can kind of talk about how we do it with AI, is like, if you don't know who your loyal customers are, if you don't know what they look like, if you don't know how frequently they're buying, then like, how are you going to make more of them? Right? I mean, it's easy to say like, oh, well, let's improve retention or let's make loyal customers. But if you have no clue what they look like, then how are you going to do that? So that's actually by default, our AI actually creates that as a starting point, which is kind of what we're looking at here on the dashboard.
Very interesting. Tell me more. I like data.
Yeah, I mean, so
mapping out customer journey is definitely the first thing we like to look at, because in many cases, not only overwhelming your customer, it will lead you to basically to bigger churn rate, or people being, let's call it, pissed off because you're texting too much, because you're sending them too many emails and whatnot. I mean, I always love these customer representative emails. Hey, Matt, can we unsubscribe that person manually, or make sure this person will never ever get an email or anything from us because they got angry. And sometimes you can also under communicate. You ghost customers and you don't create any personalized experience for them, and that will lead them obviously to choose your competitors at one point, because maybe they'll do it better.
Absolutely.
And offer something personalized and something they actually care about. It's like me sending you a Starbucks coffee after the call. I said thank you. You would probably
don't do that. Or you can. My wife will enjoy it, but you're exactly right. And it's in those journeys. I mean, so like a lot of what we see. So this, for example, maybe we'll even start here. So for us, so what our AI actually does is it uses machine learning, and it really creates a model for every store that's a customer of ours up front. and it automatically classifies every customer, segments them into, a growth opportunity, a new customer, not loyal, or a loyal customer. And the result of that, right, is immediately, so like, Matt, for yourself, if you're working with a client, you can drop this in, and straight out of the gate, you can begin to, it syncs with Klaviyo, all that sort of stuff. And you can begin to even send, very segmented and very targeted, personalized communication to these customers. So, off the bat, before you even do anything loyalty wise, and we've seen customers do this, they're able to already start to have better communication just because they can begin to understand what does this different look, what do these different audiences look like, and how do we communicate with them, and so on. But this is where you can see, sorry. Mm-hmm.
The growth, the big majority of this pie is 52% is growth. What does it mean?
Yeah, so what this means in this case, this is the number of customers in the growth segment. So this means that 50% of their customer base is a growth tier customer, or growth segment customer. What that tends to break down, and it's because it's machine learning, because it's AI, it's not sort of, these segments aren't exact. So it's not like, oh, they have only made 2 purchases, right? So if we go up here, you can see this growth tier, it tends to make around 4 purchases. I'd say in the very, very very small percentile, very low probability. But usually makes, you can kind of see the drop off here, but makes, tends to make 2, kind of gets onto the probabilistic side of 3 or 4 purchases. So that's sort of your growth tier. So that's, the majority of the customers here. What's wild though is if you actually look at it, so loyal customers, only 12.5%. So this is the total spend of customers, right? Mm-hmm. Loyal customers almost spend as much as growth tier customers, even though it's a fraction of the actual overall customer base. And to be honest, this is very, very consistent with what we see. And you'd think that across even industries, so we've got apparel customers, we've got more CPG oriented customers from the standpoint of whether it's, beverages or snacks or things like that. The ranges tend to be pretty consistent in terms of, call it 15, or less percent, of the customer base is loyal. 15 tends to be very high, but it generates this outsized impact of actual spending, which is part of why creating more loyal customers is actually such a valuable thing if you can do it in this data oriented way.
Would you say that CPG brands or companies are, are the best fit when it comes to loyalty programs, or they should highlight, not highlight, but prioritize it over any other industry because they need, their customers to come back more often than, let's say selling swords or katanas online? Probably they need it one every 2 weeks.
I mean, honestly, so it depends a lot on the brand. So I'd say what we tend to see is that brands that do really well with loyalty, tend to fall into a category, right, where there's a clear need for repeat purchases. So, if you're getting beverages, for example, so usually if you have multiple products or multiple categories, it works really well. Or if you have a singular product where there's obviously an inclination to repeat buy. So to your point, if you're Mini Katana, I don't know, I mean, honestly, they may have a really loyal following. So they might actually have a couple different katanas, and then there's merch that you can sell, and there's probably cleaning stuff, you know what I mean? So the cleaning utility, there's different things like that you can sell, which in some cases isn't necessarily about, hey, let's go and increase the LTV all the time of this customer. Sometimes it's, how do we stay in front of these customers that have a high probability of being loyal? So that way, when there is something new, like a new sword or what have you, that they might we've already got their attention. We're not trying to reestablish that relationship. And that's where we have a loyalty score actually under the hood that even has that sort of predictor. But
makes sense.
But actually, in what you're even describing there, Matt, is sort of this curve that we're looking at here. So this is what we call, this is our repeat purchase burn down. It's kind of how we look at it. So there's 2 things that become important when you can actually see the data in this way. So behind the scenes, what actually happens is our Raylion actually understands what's the highest probability purchase path to get a new customer to become loyal. So for instance, we had a beverage company that's a customer of ours, and they had a high number of growth customers that had I'd say similar, actually very steep drop off. So this is one of the things that I think people overlook when they think about repeat purchases and everything else. They go, oh, well, X percentage of my customers repeat purchase or get to a third purchase. But if you look at the drop, I mean, you're losing a significant portion, right? So part of loyalty, if you look at this line instead, yes, it's a lower number overall, but the relative drop off across these purchases, these first 4, is so low. I mean, this is amazing. Actually, this is a really good, and this is actually an example from we've tweaked the data a little bit, but from a customer of ours. But understanding that purchase path. So what we found, for instance, was a growth tier customer, a growth segment customer, often purchased a different starting product than a loyal customer, right? So like even just understanding that, you begin to get these really interesting journeys that you can craft where you can say, well, why don't we start experiment pushing the customer, like pushing the products that our loyal customers seem to be coming back for, right? Like maybe there's a challenge there, or maybe you hit that on the second purchase, and as a result, you see that drop off begin to change and so on. So like the data seems sort of, I'd say it tends to be unique up front, but even just using it begins to really inform great retention campaigns.
Makes sense. We also like to one of the first things we do with a new client on board is to find out where's the drop off, and that would simplify the whole process. We find out how many people are buying once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 5 times buyer, 6 times. Where is the big drop off? And there's usually, there like on this graph, I think that confirms it perfectly or shows it perfectly that there is usually somewhere a big drop off, and obviously that's where you should focus on improving the most, because something is happening there. It could be the product, could be communication, could be lack of personalization. So that's a good graph right there, and solid growth.
Absolutely. And then the rest of the story is, it's simple, but it's, usually we see that a loyal customer is at least 2.5 times more valuable LTV wise than a not loyal customer. So like the math sort of takes care of the rest itself from an analytics standpoint. We didn't kind of show, there's a whole front end that we have that customers interact with, like that shoppers interact with and, engage with really well and everything else. But for us, I don't know, we like to start with that from that data standpoint of, look, like before you start throwing points at people, like understand like where is it actually valuable? Like if you get to a second purchase really well, maybe you need to spend it more on the third or on the fourth instead of, upfront and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that makes totally sense. Research, it's always the most important part of, I actually before the call, I read something that was breaking it down to 10% or 90% of time you should spend researching, 10% of taking action, especially now if you have, AI doing most of the heavy lifting for you. You still have to do the research. I think you should stay close as possible to your customers, and that will be the best source of research for you. But once you have the data, now you know where to take action, what to prioritize, and
absolutely,
and how to actually benefit from it. And I agree, loyal customers spend a lot more. Maybe I can count maybe two, 3 brands that I know that my lifetime value is 30 bigger than brands that any other brands that I'll buy from. So
same.
That always works. So where does let's talk about personalization. Like where do you come in? How can you? I've seen already on the last call the power of it. So I would like to talk about this next. Like where does the personalization come into play, and how can you leverage AI to make it done faster?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll pull this up. So this is so there's a few parts to that. So in really simple terms, this is our fake, kind of demo candy store, where we begin to see personalization play a role. So this is all skinnable and brandable and so on. But where you begin to see it play a role is things like the incentives. So, the ways that you can earn points, things like the rewards. So again, if we think about like, okay, what's the right journey that we want to take somebody on, and what do we want to incentivize them to do? There's a few ways that we do it. So, one is the pure personalized side. So for instance, like I'm seeing this $2 off coupon, if you went to the same store, and became a customer and so on, like you wouldn't necessarily see that same coupon, right? So everything from the rewards that I get to the incentives that I see first in terms of order, as well as even just see it all, they all get to be personalized, right? So again, it's sort of the coffee example. If I don't like coffee, or if you haven't seen me purchase something in particular, like you can try to get me to jump a category, which is one of the hardest things to do. But if you see that I'm not engaging with it and we have that data, then maybe push, some other things that are more relevant to me as a customer and so on. So just from a pure user experience standpoint, this is our sort of built-in loyalty app for stores. So you can kind of see it in that way, right? Where it's really, you can think of it as it's custom kind of tailored per each customer. And then on the actual, on the setup side, so there's a few different ways that you can go about it, but we'll jump into our example 3 here. So we can set up personalized campaigns. So you've got the loyalty program, which is more of that kind of foundational one size fits all that people get today. And then the personalized side, this is where you can begin to go and say, okay, well, I want to go and target a particular set of customers. We update those segments automatically on a daily basis. You can drive very specific incentives. You can even set up smart incentives. So it's actually even more tailored, but we can talk about that at a later point. And then you even have a co-pilot, which is like, a lot of the questions we get from brands is like, well, where do I start? Or like, I need help with an idea. You can interact with our loyalty co-pilot, which will actually tee up a whole campaign for you.
That's what I wanted to get at. The campaign co-pilot, such a good name, by the way. It's AI as your co-pilot. It's a great name right there. And I saw it in action. It's actually pretty interesting. So let's take a look at it. What do you have there? All right, a new puppy treat. I like that idea. And my dog likes treats. But he's very selective, though. You got to be... Yeah, it's funny because there's one brand that we usually get our snacks, like, or not organic, but like the dried snacks. And we tried all of their products, and he only picked one, pretty much, maybe two.
Really?
A good day. So that there it comes. Personalization matters even for pets.
It's true. I mean, I've got a Pomsky, so Pomeranian Husky mix, and she is very cute, but is such a diva. And she also is like incredibly particular about what she eats, like to the point where she had like, it's a whole thing. She won't even eat food out of like a normal bowl. She has to have it out of like different things. It's just it's ridiculous. So very personalized, even for dogs, to your point.
Very fancy. Yes, that's absolutely. So what do you have there?
But yeah, so I'll kind of, for time's sake, we won't go through all of it, but so once we actually publish the campaign and everything else, which I can show, it'll actually pop up here. So it can be real time unless you schedule it. But I'll jump back, here. Oops, so we missed it. It already created it. But so this isn't going to be exact just because I've got a candy store brand and I threw puppy treats at it. So like the AI actually knows, the co-pilot actually knows my store. So, it's going to be a little bit off because it's not, totally candy. But, what the co-pilot does up front, right, is it gives you some idea of marketing copy. So if you wanted to do an email or that sort of thing, which you should do, it's got, tailored marketing copy based on what it knows about your brand. It suggests, specific ways to earn. It suggests specific rewards. And then from there, if I hit add recommendations, it actually goes through and does the initial setup for you. So then I can scroll down here. You can see I've done this a few times, but I can go now and say, great, well, I want to go ahead and add this. And again, from a timing standpoint, it's already gone through the process of doing some of the initial setup. So, in all likelihood, you're going to want to make some adjustments to this. So, here's our new puppy treat, launch special. But it's got this, whole make one purchase and everything. And then if you want to see different, even different suggestions, you can say, great, I want to smart suggest this thing. And it'll go through and actually pull in great photos. It'll go, actually go through the, the whole thing of using your branding, making adjustments, and so on and so forth. So again, like this is, we find that, we want to try to keep people in edit mode as much as possible and save them as much time as possible. So yes, you're running personalization. People tend to get freaked out by it a little bit. The idea behind this is, hey, look, like, yes, you can do it, but also we save you a ton of time in the process.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. And so we have, if you can scroll up a little bit on the left screen, there you go. So customer behavior. Okay. We have a bunch of different behaviors. Birthday bonus, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so you can drill into any of these. So there's and some of these are based on integrations that we have. So we've got integrations to subscription providers like Skio, and review platforms like Stamped and things like that as customers ask for it. We've got things like specific product purchases. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that we go through here.
What would be really cool is if you could reward people for sharing it in Instagram stories. I have you see the follow on Instagram. That's always a good one. We want to leverage their attention, but on Instagram, where they most likely hang out in every single day, right? But stories are so underrated. I feel like even if you have, especially for pet owners. I mean, I know I can name right now 15 friends that have pets. And if I'm gonna share it into my stories, even if this is like 50 people, seeing my story, which is pretty much guaranteed that all of my friends, especially my pet friends, will see it when I show a picture of my dog, and what snacks he's eating, maybe snacks that have helped him clean his teeth because he's a senior dog. So that works. I mean, just this is the best format of digital word of mouth marketing, sharing in your stories, because if I usually have like your friends, closest friends and family members that on personal Instagram account, so that would be a good loyalty. I don't know if you ever thought about if you can build it. I don't know how from technical behind the scenes standpoint would work, but that'll be interesting.
Yeah, we actually have an integration with a company that helps verify that. So I'd say we for brands of certain sizes, because it tends to cost a little bit more, we can actually do that. What we've ran into at times is like there's like the less sort of call it official way to do it is you give people a link, they can click on it and let them post it, but you don't actually verify, which we can do as well. But we've got a way where you can actually verify if the brand wants to. That it was in fact shared, reward the points, we track it in real time and all that sort of stuff. So that's something we can do. It's just, we don't tend to highlight it as much on here, just because from a self-serve standpoint, it's a little bit more involved to get it connected with their brand account and all that sort of stuff.
Got it. Yeah, it could be a hustle. I can imagine that. Definitely great word of mouth marketing. But the Copilot feature, I mean, in what was 2 minutes, we put together like the whole campaign around it, and copy was pretty good too. To be honest, especially for for this industry, I think it was pretty on point.
Absolutely. And then I think you brought up even kind of testing stuff earlier on when we were talking. So we also pull insights for all that. So to your point, maybe you're running a particular loyalty campaign, personalized campaign in this case. So not only do you have the benefit of say, hey, cool, it's synced with Klaviyo, it's going to send all this stuff out. You've got, maybe it's a flow for it or just a campaign or automation that you run, but then we also actually attribute it back. So we can see, well, like how many actual interactions did those customers have with the loyalty program? How many of them actually redeemed? How much money did they spend? So again, you take, for us, it's almost, we kind of took an ad-like philosophy where we said, like, what if we could treat loyalty a lot more like ads, where you can personalize it, you can tune it, you can target it, and then you can understand, we call it return on loyalty spend, but you can understand what's my return on loyalty spend for investing in these personalized campaigns or this program overall or that sort of thing.
I like that. That's actually pretty interesting. Didn't know that before. Didn't see that before. That's actually pretty interesting. I mean, obviously, data is important. I didn't know you can be that specific, or I haven't looked. I mean, I've looked into several and built myself several loyalty programs, but I haven't looked that much into like the analytics. But I do know that if a brand has a really great relationship with their customers, that obviously takes a long time to build, but it starts with day one. As you said, treat every customer like this is your only customer. That's a great mentality, definitely.
Absolutely.
And if they do that over time, you see these customers claiming this bonuses from the loyalty programs. They're definitely looking into that, and that helps drive this repeat purchase and help them become the lifetime value grows definitely significantly. And you can tap into that via, you said you integrate with Klaviyo platforms like Klaviyo's email service providers. Do you see like brands using any specific campaigns to support the loyalty programs? If so, what are those?
Yeah, I mean, so it depends on, I'd say it depends on like what phase a brand is in, right? So some brands, if they're just kind of just getting started into it, they'll do kind of the normal flows, right? So that would be things like a welcome to the actual loyalty program. So if they're signing up, depending on how they want to do that, they can kind of send the welcome thing that goes out. It can be things like if they're doing a VIP program, right? A tier, like a tier increase or decrease, changes in point balances, right? So there's things like that I'd say really engaged and active ones, anytime that point balance sort of changes in a material way, they'll send out a little notification that's just like, again, like they do a great job using it as content, right? Reasons to engage. Some will do it for rewards, so like they don't have to. So we've got that kind of built in where it's really easy. Like a customer never has to deal with a coupon code when they're using Raylion, which makes it super simple to use. But some will still do things like, hey, your rewards are expiring, or hey, you just claim this reward, don't forget about it. So again, they use it as like reasons or excuses to reach out. And that's kind of the automation side. And the campaign side is, new product launches. Again, it gives them a really nice way. So to your point, they might say, oh, hey, if you make a purchase of this specific product or in this collection in the next 30 days, then, you're going to get this, right? Or if you share this in the next 30 days or upload a photo review or what have you, like, so they'll kind of campaign it that way on less of the automation side.
Got it. And now that as you were explaining everything over the last 30 minutes, now that I think about it, it's really giving you as a brand owner or as a team behind a brand, and more opportunities to actually stay close to your customers.
Mhm.
It's obviously a good thing. I mean, I really, really think that everyone can benefit from staying close to your customer.
Mhm.
Now on to
Yeah,
the
that's well said.
tricky questions.
Yes,
Tricky
tricky
questions.
questions.
Start with one. First one. If so, let's say how to put it into words to make it even trickier. Your clients or customers that come on board,
Mhm.
they already have a loyalty program in place. If they do, how complicated is it to switch over, and what would be the reason or reasons to switch over, or the benefits, maybe not reason,
Mhm.
benefits of them switching over? Or do you see usually, or do you only see brands that already have a loyalty program but something is not working out, or they haven't looked into that, or they're interested in the Copilot? What are the reasons for them to switch? And also, do you see ever, this would be like interesting question to me personally, do you see brands coming on board that have never looked into any loyalty programs before?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, honestly, we see because of what we do and how we approach it, we tend to see both sides of the spectrum, right? So we have a lot of brands, for instance, where like one of my favorite quotes was from a customer of ours that's going to be going live here shortly, and they were like, yeah, like I've looked at a lot of loyalty programs, like in loyalty platforms, and they're like they all seem to be missing something, right? And then they come across, we kind of have our conversation, and we actually even run them through the insights that we showed, and they're like, they basically like, this is the first time it's made sense, right? The first time loyalty has made sense for them, because it's not just to throw points at people. It's a look, like, let's use a systematic process and measure it and like actually deliver the results, the return on loyalty spend that you want. So we do have sort of that side where it's like, because it's simpler and it's more digestible, we have folks that never used it before that come on board. I'd say for those that are running, on loyalty programs, today, we've definitely converted, a handful of those over, a good amount of those over. I'd say both of them are very easy from a lift standpoint. I'd say like on average, I mean, it depends on like sort of how much handholding customers want, since we treat every customer like they are our only customer. So we do a lot of like very VIP onboarding for them. But I mean, it's not uncommon for customers to be able to go live, in like fast, in less than 30 days, right? And that's not sort of total time. That's more of it depends on the size, right? So usually the larger teams take closer to 30 days because they bring in their graphic designer and they bring in their head of retention and different folks. If it's a smaller team, it happens much faster, maybe in a week. But it's kind of dependent on on the size and sort of how quick they want to go. The reason is often one, like the data that I showed up front. So just being able to paint the picture of, hey, look, like here's the journey that your customers are going on today. Here's what your loyal customers actually look like. Let's put in now a plan. So usually we end up tweaking what their loyalty program was to better effectiveness, because they're going, oh, because they tend to just blanket it, right? They're like, you're in points. Here's some stuff you get. Whereas we'll look at it and say, well, look, because you have the data and you understand, like what we saw before, you've got a big drop off on your second purchase or in your third purchase. We're gonna do special kickers at specific points to move that, to basically move that number up, right? We want to see more, third purchases or more fourth purchases or what have you. And we're able to track all that. So they tend to shift over for that, for flexibility, for price, for better service and things of that sort, the personalization aspects.
You answered a bunch of my questions, so I think we're done with the tricky questions. But is there a sweet spot when it comes to like order volume or revenue volume that brands should actually that you like to work with, or brands that you like to work with, or it can be as good as a brand that is starting out, as maybe CPG brands should. I mean, I don't know. Would love to hear your opinion on that. Should they consider loyalty programs from almost very beginning, if not very beginning, versus a brand, like I said, that really needs to focus on client, only on client acquisition because they have maybe only 2-3 products that don't require to be reordered every 3-4 weeks. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so I mean, like, to me, like, if you're a brand new brand, if you're a new brand that's just starting out, honestly, like, I would say, like, unless you're very subscription oriented up front, loyalty probably doesn't make as much sense as a start. Like, and I know that's probably taboo from a sales standpoint, but it's like, because like having started multiple companies and everything else, it's just one of those things of, early stage, your core focus should be just learning your customers and like, and learning about them and seeing what's working and getting traction and so on. And then once you begin to get a sense of like what your loyal customers do look like, and you want, more understanding about it and everything else, then I'd say layer it on. It makes sense. Again, like we have some customers that are much earlier, but they're already sort of so call it like if it's like a beverage brand or a snack brand or a supplement brand, like those are inherently sort of repeat business oriented, repeat purchase oriented. Those I'd say it probably makes sense because like you just want to incentivize that up front. But I mean, outside of that, I mean, I'd say the place is loyalty works for in a lot of instances. It's almost easier to describe. Like if you're a brand where, you're doing 1 or 2 sales a year and you don't have a lot of cross-sell opportunity, you don't have a lot of accessory opportunity, it probably just doesn't make as much sense. I mean, I'd say, or at the very least, the loyalty program looks different, right? So like in that case, the emphasis is less drive a repeat purchase, and it's more, how do you keep them engaged? How do you make them feel special and that sort of thing? So like luxury, if you look at like the way that luxury brands do loyalty, depending on the brand, it tends to be less like here's a repeat purchase and more status and things like that.
Makes sense. And I do have one question before that regarding retail, but before I get into that, luxury, you've mentioned luxury brands. I mean, the best experience that I can think of and remember, I probably will remember it forever. It was in Paris, and when we were shopping on Champs-Elysees in this beautiful, beautiful street with fantastic stores that are flagship stores.
One of my favorite places.
Exactly. We always love, whenever we go to Europe, that's usually the first place we visit. Even though recently it was so hot, like 110 degrees, no AC, nowhere, 100 to 110 degrees, high humidity, and no AC. It's quite tough.
That's unusual. That's very unusual.
Very unusual, yes. Well, I remember, summers were usually like around 80 in Europe when I was growing up, and that was fantastic. Like you go to the ocean or Baltic Sea or whatever, from Poland, but it's definitely got hotter. But that's not the question. That's the thing I wanted to say. The loyalty was only collecting our information, and next time we entered the store, they knew our name just by typing in the phone number. And fancy like steakhouses, fancy restaurants that we go to, like, just by entering, you don't need to get a discount, or I don't need to get a free steak or whatever. I just knowing that you enter the restaurant or that boutique or that store, and they welcome you with your name. They have some information about your recent purchases. Maybe they can ask you about that. How do you find it? How do you need help taking care of it? Or maybe adding something little as that cleaning kit for your leather goods or whatnot. Something small, but knowing that, hey, I know who you are. I'm so happy that you're my customer. I value you, and I want to, keep building that relationship for the next 40, 50, 60 years and beyond. So I think that's also something underrated. It's not doesn't always have to be a discount or some offer, like a bundle offer or whatnot. But my question was regarding retail. Do you see, or is there any way? I have absolutely no experience with retail, other than buying retail. But that's where the question actually comes from. If I have a CPG brand that sells online and in retail, is there any way to try to get people that are buying in retail mostly to introduce them to our benefits and loyalty programs that we run on the D2C side? Have you ever experienced have any information on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're talking about an instance where maybe you've got predominantly a D2C brand, but you're selling to, say, distributors, right? So it's a common instance would be, if I'm a chip brand, maybe I sell to grocery stores, and as a result, yes, I sell direct, but I also have this distribution channel, or apparel, right? Does that oftentimes. So that's kind of what you're referring to?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I think what we're actually doing some experiments around that today. The primary experiment that we're running is really on the receipt side, right? So I'd say the idea that that we're kind of running through in that sort of digital, almost like an omni-channel crossover in a way, where you're not owning the distribution channel itself or the retailer itself, is beginning to still capture that customer by being able to say, hey, look, if you upload your receipt, right, then we can still sort of reward you with these points, and obviously going through that process, the brand captures email and so on. And then as a result of that, they begin to have that dialogue and that conversation. So I'd say that's sort of we're beginning to experiment with some brands, in just that area in a way that's really scalable, and I think will work really well.
I could think of QR codes, as simple as the QR codes, or maybe like a keyword, like text keyword. Because email, I mean, you could try it with email, I've done it actually with one brand. It's a skincare brand, and they do a lot. They had like a separate customer representative that handles, their specific emails for like reward programs and stuff like that. But it could be as simple as, hey, text loyalty to that number, and this could start the sequence. And then you, like you said, all you need to do is upload your receipt or picture with the product, and we'll sign you up for a loyalty program so you can start getting information or benefits or whatnot. I think this is actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, you reminded me a few other things that we've seen that work well is like pop-ups. So that's sort of another way where it's not necessarily with the retailer itself, but even just like doing your own sort of small pop-up helps cultivate that community in person.
Yeah.
And then gamifying stuff with retailers, like the QR code side, as you mentioned, reminded me of that, where like, whereas a DTC brand, you might be able to collaborate with the retailer and then say, even a select few stores, do some kind of check-in competition or things like that, where where they can go into the store, they can kind of see the signage, they can hit the QR code, it takes them to the site, and it allows for that sort of interplay and that kind of crossover. We've seen a lot of success on the QR code side and gamifying some of that sort of process before.
There is some smaller local, not like big chain retail stores, but local smaller stores that do email marketing and SMS. They do it poorly, but they do it. And maybe it's time for us to find a way to reach out to them. And all I see, and I'll buy it no matter what, because that's where I get my raw stuff, and no one else has it. and I'm obviously big time into it. I grew up on it, so I found it in here, and I love it. So
it's awesome.
All I get from them is like, hey, today or this week you can save $2 on tomatoes and strawberries. But why don't they do with their best, partners, collaborations with like, hey, you can sign up to benefit, to save on XYZ, and do a collaboration with their favorite brands. Source, they also are, I would say, they're also are focused on relationship with
absolutely
partners, vendors, so they can communicate on some collaborations and do that for local communities. I think this would be a great idea as well, and that's where you can push loyalty even further. They do send me also like, hey, you have $5 off for your next purchase, come back. And that's about it. I mean, this could be taken a step further.
Yeah. I mean, brand storytelling is powerful in that.
Absolutely. And now to conclude, this was definitely powerful, and I learned a lot, and I'm sure that the rest of the audience and people that tuned in as well. Tell me about the VIP experience, the onboarding experience. How can brand get started, and where how does the first 7 to 14 days look like? And if they would consider that, how can they reach out or get started?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like our site has, an easy way to book a demo. If you want to see one, you're welcome to connect. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and shoot me a DM that way. There's a variety of ways. Those are probably the two fastest. Twitter is also an option. I'm on Twitter, and then VIP wise. So there's a few things that we do. So one, some brands, like they're not even sure, right? So for that, what we do, I kind of showed you the data. So we actually, we'll basically do like a free consultation with them, right? Where it's like, it's not, our goal is not to sell. I mean, we've had brands that go through it, and honestly, their stuff looks really good. And we're like, look, like, here's some things that you can do. Like, these things are actually looking pretty good overall though. So it's up to you. We think we can help, but like, I don't know if this is the most pressing thing for you. But we'll run all that data for free, all the analytics, and we'll actually give sort of our expert recommendation of what a program could look like to kind of hit on some of the pain points that they experience. So we can do that. We've got some brands too that literally like they see it and they're like, this is awesome, we just want to roll. In which case we get them into our onboarding. We do kickoff calls with them. We do a lot of like just very personal stuff with their branding and all sorts of stuff. So it's a very light lift. I mean, our AI actually pre-brands the entire experience for them. So they show up, with us with actually a pre-branded version of, the entire loyalty experience for their customers. And then from there, we can tweak it we can make adjustments with them and so on. So, our goal again is, we want people to get more repeat purchases. We want brands having, higher LTVs. So we try to make it as easy as possible for them.
How does the communication between the brand or their team and your team look like? Is that Monday to Friday, and Is that AI only, or do they have to? do they get to talk to a real human?
No, they get to talk to real people. We've got dedicated, customer success people. So depending on the brand, I mean, we can do it through email. We usually set up a dedicated Slack group, just so it's like for things that are kind of easier to track, especially through the onboarding process. But yeah, I mean, and then on top of that, we'll do, we tend to do kind of regular calls, even just to kind of say like just check-ins to see how things are going. I mean, again, our goal is, this isn't like oh, great, thanks for using it, we're going to drop you off here now. Our view is the way that we improve the product and make, and help our customers is by staying in sort of constant contact. So we view it more as a partnership, than anything else.
I love that approach. Well, Nathan, thank you so much. I'll ask you to stay on for another minute. We'll say goodbye to everyone who joined on this live stream. Thank you so much. I look forward to our next one, and good luck with everything.
Thanks, man. Thanks all.